What was meant to break you might be what blesses you. The words echoed in Sarah's mind as she sat in the dim light of her small apartment, staring at the bills piling up on the table. Just a year ago, she had been at the top of her career. Promotions, respect, a future full of promise. Then, without warning, the company downsized and her position was eliminated. The job hunt had been brutal. Rejection after rejection, each one chipping away at her confidence. Friends whispered that maybe she wasn't as good as she thought. Doubt crept in like an unwelcome shadow. But tonight, as she flipped through her worn Bible, her fingers stopped at Genesis 50 verse 20. Joseph's words to his brothers, the same brothers who betrayed him, sold him into slavery, left him for dead, rang out like a lifeline. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. Sarah let out a slow breath. She had read the story 100 times, but tonight, it felt personal. Joseph's suffering hadn't been pointless. His pain had positioned him. First in a pit, then in a prison, then in a palace. What if her own struggle wasn't the end of her story, but the setup for something greater? She thought about the small baking business she had started out of desperation, selling cookies and cakes to neighbors just to make ends meet. It wasn't much, but people kept coming back, telling her how much her treats reminded them of home. What if this tiny, unexpected door was the very thing God was using to redirect her? Across town, Marcus sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. The phone call still burned in his ears. His fiancée had called off the wedding. "I just don't see a future with you anymore," she had said. The words had cut deeper than any knife. He had planned everything, the house, the life, the family. Now it was all gone. He scrolled through his phone mindlessly, stopping when a post from a friend caught his eye. God can flip the enemy's plan. Your pain won't be wasted. It'll be part of your testimony. He scoffed at first. What testimony? What good could possibly come from this? But then he remembered David, how the years spent running from Saul, hiding in caves, had prepared him to be king. How the very battles he fought in the shadows trained him for the throne. Maybe this heartbreak wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning of something he couldn't yet see. In a hospital room, Elena held her newborn son for the first time, tears streaming down her face. The pregnancy had been anything but easy, bed rest, complications, fear gripping her every night. The enemy had whispered lies. You'll lose this one too. After 2 miscarriages, the fear had been paralyzing. But here he was, breathing, crying alive. As she traced his tiny fingers, she thought about the verse her grandmother had written on a card for her. What the enemy meant for evil, God can turn for good. All those nights of worry, all the prayers cried out in desperation, they hadn't been ignored. They had been part of the story. Stories like these were everywhere. The single mother working 2 jobs, wondering if her sacrifices would ever matter, only to see her children rise and call her blessed. The man who battled addiction, counting every sober day as a miracle, now mentoring others fighting the same war. The couple who lost everything in a fire, only to find a deeper love and community in the rebuilding. The enemy's playbook hasn't changed. He comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But God specializes in resurrection, in taking what was broken and making it whole, in turning mourning into dancing, ashes into beauty. Maybe right now, you're in the middle of what feels like a pit. The walls are high, the light is dim, and the enemy's voice is loud. This is it. You're finished. But what if this pit is just a prelude to your purpose? What if this pain is the very thing that positions you for your promise? Joseph couldn't see the palace from the prison. David couldn't see the throne from the cave. But God was working, even in the silence, even in the struggle. Your story isn't over. The enemy may have meant it for evil, but God, He's already turning it around. If you believe it, type, God is turning it around. Your testimony isn't finished yet.